one of the reasons young men, if they know there's something to do that it's going to take them something, why they might not actually pursue it. Do you think it has anything to do with fear?
Yeah, I think they're totally afraid.
Hey, it's Harry
And Carson,
with the Pillars Podcast.
real talk for real growth.
Let's dive in. Carson, how you doing today?
Great, happy to be here.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
This is a great discussion today.
Yeah.
We're talking about. We're going to talk about setting high standards and high expectations for ourselves.
This one's great.
Yeah. Do you have any standards that you set high for yourself?
I think we all do, but definitely, especially when it comes to women.
You have high expectations.
Yeah, high standards, but
Well, that's good.
they're good.
For a young man like you, I would say set the high standards for sure. And if they set the high standards and you're still single at 40, then maybe you shouldn't have been married at all anyway in the first place. So, but yeah, setting high standards and expectations, man, that's hard. That's challenging for us.
Yeah. I think it's especially tough for younger guys too, because like you have to be taught standards first, right?
Yeah.
You know, and then you think about things that you want to do in life and goals you want to achieve. I think
Well,
that's
you're seeing the social media. You think
Right.
that's easy to get. Oh, that's it. I just do bump and I get it.
that's what I mean. But really, it's like that's not reality.
No, it's not. What do you think might be one of the reasons young men, if they know there's something to do that it's going to take them something, why they might not actually pursue it? Do you think it has anything to do with fear?
Yeah, I think they're totally afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's definitely things that I have wanted to do. However, I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm speaking from experience. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think that too. I think it's fear, and it's the fear of failing. Like if I do this, I'm not going to do it.
Failing sucks.
Yeah, and when you fail, when you have this fear, this failure, this sense, it goes right into your whole identity of who you are, you know. And like we were talking before, how to succeed, it's a part of failing is a part of it. And if we're afraid to fail because it might say this is who I am, then we won't even give it a try.
Yeah.
You know, so even if it's not high expectations and standards, we might just have low ones and say, I'm not even going to try that. But what would it be like if you were inspired to say you can do this and failure is not an obstacle for you because it's teaching you and you're going to eventually get there, and you have that support network that tells you that?
If failure you're saying if failure wasn't an option and it was like I was so competent and knowing I was going to get there.
Well, what I say, if failure is just simply part of the process and it's not a big deal. So you just think failure, no big deal. That's just a part of it.
Yeah, that's a part of success. Honestly, I think that takes a weight off of you. Off of me personally, that takes a weight.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think speaking for other young men too, is like that takes a weight off of anyone you tell that to. Hey, if you fail, it's okay. Mm-hmm. That's actually something we encourage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I'm recalling a story about...
we're not told that enough, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that you should be able to fail and that's okay.
Yes.
I agree. That the story I was telling you about the girl who was in class, she was afraid of failing the class and it was too hard for her, and the professor said, "Doesn't worry, I'm going to give you an A anyway. So just do your best." Mm-hmm. And the result was that she actually achieved an A because she was not so afraid of failing.
Really?
Yeah. Which is really kind of interesting, that the anxiety and the fear of failing and not achieving high or not even trying is so much there that
it takes you over.
I was watching Golf Channel, and they were talking about this one golfer, female golfer, very good, but she had a very difficult time putting. And the pressure of not putting well just mounted more and more and more for her. And the more fear of not putting well gave her more fear, and she didn't putt well.
Yeah.
So hard to get over this feeling of failure when you try to achieve and succeed in life. So it's quite interesting. Do you know anybody in your life who has achieved great things?
Of course. I'm talking to one person right now.
Who's that?
You.
Oh, no. Well, I am trying to achieve great things, but even I would say that my level of expectation and standards, I certainly have high standards, but I sometimes just don't feel like I meet those standards all the time. And, it's like I am so inadequate in meeting those standards. But I tell you what the hope is for me, that I know that in Christ, who has called me to certain things, that he's patient with me, and my ability to achieve those things are only going to be through him.
Yeah.
And so when I do fail at things, there are times where I just like, oh, man, but then I realize, you know what? He's got me, and I'm still on this process. That's why even for guys like you, I want to be able to say, take your time, be patient with yourself. I've got to do the same thing with me, be patient with myself, because I do want to meet that high standard.
Yeah.
But the chances are I'm going to fail, and don't get stuck.
Hey, we're glad you joined us today.
If you're resonating with the conversation, hit subscribe and stay in the loop.
Got a question or a topic you'd like us to explore? Drop it in the comments. We're listening.
And remember, the Pillars podcast is not just about talking. It's about taking action.
Check the link for more. And that feeling you were talking about of like feeling so inadequate and like, I know I can do better kind of thing. Like that's normal, right?
Yes.
And
especially if you want to be a high achiever.
Right. And that is something that, for example, if somebody my age or even me, if I felt that way and I have high standards or high expectations of myself, is that that's something that's okay to feel and like build off that.
Yeah. You're saying if you have high standards and you fail, if you can still take on the sense that, hey, I'm still achieving. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Or if you're like, dang it, I should have done better. Like that's okay because then you want to do better, right?
Yeah. Well, there's that. I'm always very suspect of when I say the words to myself or to anyone else. Should. You should have. The only way that I say should is that once you are something, you should this in the fact that that's what you already are. So if you're a apple tree, you should produce apples.
Right. Got it. Okay.
So in that regard, that our should is if we have gotten there, we're going to see the fruit of what it is that we are at. But even if we're achieving high standards and say we call ourselves Christians and we should act this way, we would say to ourselves, we should act that way because we are Christians, but we also have the understanding that we are being formed into that. But from the perspective of the God who has saved us, he already sees that in us, and he sees he's working us to that place of perfection. And we have to be patient with ourselves, because this is an amazing scripture that I always go to in the Bible, is that in him
I can't wait.
There is no condemnation. So he's already saying, this is how you should be if you're in me, but you're not there yet, but I see you as there. So there's no condemnation for you when you don't do what I say that you should do.
Yeah.
Because I know you're on your way to getting there, that you're working towards that, but I'm going to make you perfect. You're not going to do that by yourself, but just keep walking in that direction.
That's so good. It makes me think about that other passage of scripture too, with Jesus it's somewhere in Matthew, and Jesus is talking, and he says, I didn't come to condemn the world, but to save the world.
Yeah. Yes.
Those who feel condemned that's because they are condemned. They're already condemned.
They're already condemned. But he came to save us. He saved me.
He saved me.
So if he's saving me, I'm his, and I'm going to be perfect one day. I'm going to meet that.
There's such a confidence and such a joy in that.
Oh, yes, there is.
You know?
Yeah. And it, like we were talking about before, knowing who we are in him and living that character of a real man, one of the essential things is having that integrity. That integrity to say, I was aiming for that. I didn't meet that. And to be able to then really address it, because now you can address it in a way like, how did I not do that? When we talked about I should have done that, rather than just I should have and having condemnation, we say, hey, I didn't do that. What did I need to do instead? What could I have done instead? And now that becomes a motivation or a guide for us to know what to do next.
I think that is such a common issue amongst, like, that's that kind of self-talk that I get caught in all the time.
Yeah.
And I know people my age get caught in that all the time as well. You know, some of my friends and stuff, I should have done this, I should have done that.
Yeah.
Rather than, hey, this is what I did do wrong, and okay, that's what I did, and this is what we got to do in order to fix that.
The should is not to condemn. The should is only to correct.
Right. And so often the should is
the condemnation.
Condemning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I always go back then to how are we receptive to that kind of language? What makes us receptive to that kind of language?
What makes us receptive to the negative talk?
Yeah, to the negative talk.
It's so interesting. It's so stupid, right? Like, we give in to what's less rather than what's greater.
Yeah. And the reason typically why we do is we have been taught that. We have been, when we grow up, or the world, or our friends, or, people outside of our communities who know nothing, to care nothing about us. But when we are nurtured in that environment where we talked about, if you have security, belonging, identity, and competence and purpose, in that environment, you're not shamed and put down and given the language to put into your head, like, oh, you shouldn't have. Why'd you do that? You shouldn't have done that. Why you did? Didn't I tell you better than that? When we get that language that we're hearing, we internalize it and we begin to say it to ourselves. But when you say, hey, that was a good try. Maybe do this. Hey, I'm glad you tried that. Good job. I have a daughter who has a son, and she is so amazing at that. She is amazing. Her son will do something, and I could even say, like, I want to correct that right away.
Yeah.
But she takes a whole perspective of, I wonder what you were thinking when you did that. And it's not a condemnation, but it's like, I'm curious.
It's like an unorthodox but effective.
Yes. So you're not putting shame. You're not putting anything like, oh, I'm so bad. It's like, well, maybe you could do this. Well, no, maybe we'll try and have this later, and maybe that'll work better.
Yeah.
And she's coming around a whole different direction.
Yeah, she's approaching it way
where I don't see any condemnation.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
Let's just evaluate the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very proud of her for that.
Well, it obviously, she was raised by you.
And
so I think that just translates.
I've learned.
I know you.
Trust me, I've learned.
I think it's translated over time into her, but for you to even share that, and that's, I know obviously she had that sense of security growing up, and just the high standard that was set by Christ, and that you led as an example of Christ in her life is it's just remarkable.
I do want to continue to learn to do that myself, to keep doing that, to inspire young men to set high standards, and to have high expectations of themselves,
Yeah.
but be very mindful of whether or not they're condemning themselves instead of just finding ways to correct mistakes that they've made that they're inevitably going to make because of that. And then, like we talked about before, getting in the right community. You get in a good, right group of people, they're going to inspire you to life.
Yeah.
Get in the right group of men who will inspire you to life. Makes a big difference.
Well, what I wanted to ask you this, it's obviously good to have high standards, and we have to accept that it's inevitable, like, so we're going to fail. But what about when it comes, like, high standard for what, though? Because doesn't that matter? Because if you just have high standards to make a lot of money.
Yeah. High standards, I would say, to bring life in everything that we do. When we talk about what it means to be a man, and from that moral perspective, what God ordains for us is to bring life, and as we lead sacrificially. As we live out our purpose, we live out our purpose to be willing to die on the behalf of others. All of that is for ultimately the glory of God.
Right.
When Jesus did what he did, it ultimately was for the glory of God. And that kind of man who sacrifices his life for others, and God is glorified in that.
Yeah.
Because he's a giver of life.
Yeah.
And that's what he loves.
That's so encouraging, because when you're someone like my age, you look at that as just, that's the man I want to be, the one that's dying for others, the one that's falling on my sword for others, So
even in our world today, we give the highest awards for those who have given their lives.
Yeah. And
then, interesting enough, the highest reward in heaven that will be given will be those who have given their lives.
Yeah.
So let's be men who give our lives.
Yes.
All right, for others, for the life of others. All right, great conversation. I look to continue on next time.